Okay, let's have a look at this question. We are told the area of the rectangle is equal to the area of the square. We want to find the value of x. So the area of the rectangle is length times width, which is 2x plus 6 times 2x plus 1. I'm going to go ahead and multiply out my brackets, and that's going to turn out to be 4x squared plus 2x plus 12x is plus 14x plus 6. The area of the square is 3x minus 1 times 3x minus 1. That's going to multiply out to give me 9x squared minus 6x plus 1. The area of the rectangle has to equal the area of the square, which means 9x squared minus 6x plus 1 has to equal 4x squared plus 14x plus 6. This is quite clearly a quadratic equation because of the x squareds. And if I'm going to solve a quadratic equation to find the value of x, I need to have this thing nicely arranged. X squared term, x term, number term equals 0. So I'm going to start moving and collecting my terms now. The 4x squared moves over here to make a 5x squared. The 14x comes over here, becomes a minus 14x, and with the minus 6x makes a minus 20x. The 6 moves over here as well, becoming a minus 6, and plus 1 minus 6 is minus 5. That's all equal to 0. Now, it's not telling me to round my answer, which is a clue this thing factorizes. This is quite a big, nasty looking equation, and factorizing it, you might think, oh, I should use the principle of go big then go home. And that will certainly work, but we can actually make our lives easier by spotting that I can divide this whole thing by 5. And that will give me the much easier to work with x squared minus 4x minus 1 equals 0. Now, when I'm looking at this thing, I'm beginning to realize that perhaps it doesn't factorize after all. Perhaps it's one of those rare circumstances where they're not telling me to round my answer, but I'm going to need to use the quadratic formula. Let's think about this for a second. I cannot multiply two numbers to make 1 and have them subtract to make 4. That doesn't make any sense at all. So I'm going to use my quadratic formula or my completing the square method. For practice, let's use completing the square. So completing the square will take these two terms over here. I will make a bracket, x minus 2 squared. I've taken that 4 and halved it to make the 2. I'll subtract a 4, which is the 2 squared. Remember, for completing the square, I halve it and then I square it in order to get something which is equal to this bit over here in the middle. I also have to have a minus 1 to account for that minus 1 over there. And this all equals 0. Now I just solve this thing like a regular equation. X minus 2 squared equals 5. I'm going to square root, getting me x minus 2 equals plus or minus the square root of 5. And then x must equal 2 plus or minus the square root of 5. If you type these two answers into your calculator, you'll realize that the one with a minus actually comes out negative, so it can't really represent a length. We can't have a negative number representing a length, so we're going to stick with the positive answer in this case, which is 2 plus the square root of 5, and that's coming out as 4.24. And that would be in centimeters. So at the top of this worksheet, I said that it's a good indication when the question doesn't ask you to round an answer that your answer will factorize. But it's not a guarantee, so you have to use your common sense. And if you're unsure as to whether something will factorize or not, just stick it into the quadratic formula or do completing the square with it. And if your answer comes out with some kind of horrible square root, you know that one doesn't factorize. I will do the rest of the questions in the next video.